The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar for this afternoon. Is going to be focused on this learning trip that Community Farm Alliance took in April. And so that's what we're here for today. I want to take just a minute for you to know what your tools are and to let you know who I am. I'm Laurie White. I'm on staff with Community Farm Alliance since fall of 2018. And it was my job to coordinate this trip and get people together for it. You should have on the left side of your screen a place where you can ask questions, and the presenters will be able to see that, and we can answer questions as we go along, or we'll save some time for questions and answers at the end. There will be copies of the slides available following the presentation, and the webinar is also going to be recorded so that you can go back and reference it later or share it with people that you think would benefit from it. So I am going to, looking at our agenda for today, we are going to introduce the presenters. I'm going to give a little backstory on what's happened so far on this proposed Food and Ag Center, and then we have an overview of the ACENET trip, starting with a little virtual tour, and then sharing some insights and discussion from the trip participants about their impressions, and then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end and talk about what the next steps are for this project. So, and we should be done within an hour today. So I'm going to let the other presenters introduce themselves. Presenters, if you'll just go by the order of what's on the slides here. I'll start with Tiffany Belfield is my co-worker at Community Farm Alliance. She is also the owner and operator of Blue Estates. Primarily, her production is herbal teas. She's not able to be with us on the call today. Our next presenter.
Hi, my name is Tabea Fourman. I own Sunny Wolf Farm. We're close to Berea, and I participated in the trip as a farmer. And we raise pasture-raised pork and chicken.
Hi, my name is Sarah Vaughn. I'm the programs coordinator for Feeding Kentucky. I'm the coordinator of a program called the Farms to Food Banks program, where we purchase produce from farmers to give to the food banks. Our office is located in Berea, Kentucky.
Amy Williams from Mesa was meant to be on this call with us today, but she's sick. She went on this trip with us and really carried the perspective of somebody who does economic development work. Mesa also is a champion in the Appalachian economy for helping businesses figure out how to do energy conservation efforts. So that's Amy. She won't be with us today. Kenya Abraham is with Slack Market Farm. They are doing pasture-raised animals for halal meat production, also organizing, getting more affordable organic feeds for livestock operations in Kentucky, and operate a raw milk herd share. So that's Kenya.
I'm Nathan Flynn. I'm also on staff with Community Farm Alliance. I work primarily in Eastern Kentucky, working with farmers markets, and then I also work with the farm-to-table value chain development, helping producers find new ways to access new markets and hopefully increase their enterprises, and was excited to be a part of this trip.
I'm Lisa Munniksma. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Franklin County Farmers Market. We're working with a Farmers Market Promotion Program grant to improve healthy food access in the community and also to increase marketing opportunities for farmers in the area.
Then next we have a couple of people who went on the trip with us who contributed some content for today's presentation but weren't able to be on today's call. That includes Katie Startzman from Native Bagel Company. They are a farm-to-bagel eatery in Berea, Kentucky that incubated up out of the Berea Farmers Market. So Katie really brought the perspective of somebody who's a food entrepreneur and went through a startup process of growing her business and is doing a lot of local purchasing. Kyle Ayers is production manager for Sweetgrass Granola, and they are a local food company doing small-scale food manufacturing. So he brought that perspective to the trip. And then Allie Blair wears a lot of hats in the community, but she primarily is the owner, for her interest in the food economy, is the owner of and operator of Peg and All food truck and catering services that are a food truck that does local seasonal foods. So that was some of the perspective. Allie has also had a brick and mortar restaurant that was doing local seasonal foods. So that's some of the perspective that Allie brought to the trip and made some contributions based on that. So just to give you a little bit of background on how this trip came about and why we did it. In 2018, Community Farm Alliance, in partnership with 10 other organizations, applied for a local food promotion program grant through the USDA. And the objective of that grant was to explore the possibility of creating a food and ag center for central Kentucky that, and this was really set up to be a grassroots kind of effort to survey the needs in the community, find out what are the gaps in the local food economy and what facilities or services could help to close some of those gaps and solve problems for producers, especially for producers who are trying to scale up their operations, to be able to access new markets, maybe bigger markets than what they have had, or to add additional lines of revenue to their farming operations through value-added processing or being able to get in a distribution system to get their products to a larger market. The kind of focus area for this grant project is Central Kentucky, focusing on Madison County and all the counties that touch it. So that's Fayette, Clark, Estill, Jackson, Rockcastle, Garrett, Jessamine, and Fayette counties. And those are not necessarily limited to those counties, but it's that's the area that we're focusing on. We also want to acknowledge the collaboration of Bluegrass Farm to Table in this work. They've been really helpful in helping us get started and connecting us with resources. What we've done so far is we've started identifying potential stakeholders in this project. Anyone who is working in the local food economy who might benefit from or use the facilities or services of a food and ag center in some way. So that could be farmers, it could be food processors, it could be food service providers, it could be community service organizations that are working on food access or helping farmers. It could be buyers on the retail end, such as restaurants who want to be able to source locally but are having trouble figuring out how to work with a lot of different producers who could benefit from an aggregation facility or service. It could be schools that need that want to use local foods but could use stuff that's a little more processed than raw products. So those are some of the stakeholders that we've identified. We've done some initial survey work, and our first real stakeholder meeting was in February, where we did some brainstorming about what are the barriers that people have encountered in their local food system work, and generating some ideas of what a food and ag center might look like or how it might serve the local food economy of Central Kentucky. That meeting was hosted at FAHI, who's one of the partners on our grant, partly because FAHI are the owners of this former factory building that you see in the bottom right corner picture. It's located in Berea, Kentucky, which is in south central Madison County. And the Parker Seal factory has been idle for 20 some years. And FAHI has a commitment to renovate this building as some kind of asset to the community. And one of the potential uses they've identified for this building is a possible food and ag center. So they are partnered with Community Farm Alliance and the other organizations on this grant to explore this possibility of how that facility might be used. So in February, we had this brainstorming session, focus group, and then had a tour of this, the Parker Seal building that we're checking out as a possible location for this food and ag center. The next step after that was another partner organization to work with them is AceNet in Athens, Ohio. And Nathan is going to talk with you a little bit about AceNet and how they are a partner in this work.
All right. Why visit AceNet, Appalachian Center for Economic Networks? They've started in 1985, seeing a need for an organization to help small businesses sort of develop and have assistance on that route to success and enterprise. And in 1992, they started developing a shared use kitchen space which would later be called the Food Venture Center, which opened in 1996. That's over 20 years ago. So why AceNet? Because AceNet's one of the first organizations to really do what we're trying to do in Central Kentucky, and they've done it well in Athens, serving over 32 counties in their time since they've been around. And in that first year, in 1996, they served over 40 businesses. At this time, they serve over 50 businesses every year through their Food Venture Center and their Nelsonville facility, which opened up in 2006. They saw that need just being in Athens, thriving small business, and they're everywhere. They have enterprise, restaurant, small artisan, breweries, food trucks, and it's impossible to say necessarily how much of an impact AceNet's had on that. But I would say that you would be naive to not have had an impact. Just walking through Athens, you can see how small business is really thriving. So I think that's why AceNet was a great example. I think we're able to learn a lot from this visit, and we'll get into that as we go through the presentation.
Nathan, I'm not sure what's going on with your sound, but you're cutting in and out.
Oh no. Did you hear most of what I said?
Most, yeah.
Okay.
I could hear you really clearly just now.
Should I repeat what I said?
I think you're okay to just keep going from there.
I think that was at the end of that slide.
All right, I'm not sure we're gonna, we seem to be losing Nathan.
Oh, you can't hear me?
I can now.
Oh, no. How about now?
Yeah.
I can continue, or somebody else could take over for me. Whatever your call, Laurie.
Let's go on to, we've prepared a little virtual tour with some pictures to kind of lead you through the facilities that we saw in Athens. We've separated it into the 2 days and the 2 different campuses of AceNet. Do you want to give it a shot, Nathan, and see if we can hear you?
Yeah, I'll give it a go.
Okay. Nathan's going to be our day 1 tour guide.
All right. So in the picture here on the left, you can see that's us entering the main part of the central kitchen. There's 3 main components of the Food Venture Center: the central kitchen, thermal processing room, which is fairly new, and then a warehouse facility that they also have. The picture on the right is their shared use kitchen in full swing. It's fairly large. They've got a lot of equipment there. They've got 9 convection ovens, and I think there's a list on a future slide. But in their central kitchen, it's completely shared use. Any of their tenants are able to use that kitchen at any time. All they have to do is sign in, and make sure they sign out when they're done. It has, like it's on the list here on the left, it's a pretty nice list of everything they have. Some of the cooler things they have is all the convection ovens. They have a blast chiller. They've got some really large mixers, which if you're into cooking or food preparation, I sort of nerd out over large stand mixers. They're sort of fun to look at. They've got some other facilities connected to that kitchen. They have a room that's primarily used for drying pasta. They have a packing and labeling room also that is used by some of their tenants. And it's all shared use. Any of their tenants can use these rooms at any time. There's the pasta room on the right, packing and labeling room on the left. It's Adam, Food Venture Center coordinator Adam Cody there in the beer net. Then they also have a fully functional thermal packaging room, thermal processing room, rather. And it's interesting, some of the equipment in the thermal processing room was actually purchased in cooperation with one of their core tenants who is sort of ready to expand their business and improve the efficiency and speed of the production line. And so they were able to work out sort of buying some of this equipment together and then also having it to be shared use with certain procedures in place to make sure that everybody respected it and didn't abuse it. But it's got fully functional steam kettles. I think they can hold up to 200 gallons total. They've got a tilt skillet, which if you've never seen a tilt skillet, they're pretty awesome. You can cook pretty much anything you'd ever want in a tilt skillet. And then they have a piston filler, which is your automatic filler, which will bang out your bottles much faster than you could ever do by hand. And having the shared use space where multiple businesses are profiting and using this equipment, it's much easier to afford and to justify that expense. So a lot of businesses wouldn't be able to afford equipment like that, but because of the shared use aspect of it, it's much more feasible. We can move to the next slide. So they charge their tenants by the hour, and it's fairly run on the honor system. You sign in, you get to the kitchen, you sign out when you're done. They have different rates for different processes and different uses in the kitchen. And then, as it says on the slide, some tenants that are there quite often and are their anchors pay its flat rate instead of having to record all their hours and paying by the hour. These are some pictures of their warehouse. They have a fairly sizable warehouse with cold storage, freezer storage, and dry storage. Tenants pay for dry storage by the pallet space, and then they pay for cooler and freezer storage by the square foot, which is on different shelving units and things inside of those walk-in coolers and freezers. And then they also have dry storage space that could be locked if you're someone you have something very valuable, or you just want to be protective. You can lock your supplies up. So one of the great parts about shared use space is that the kitchen is able to get certain licensing and be in compliance with certain regulations, which will cover pretty much everyone in the facility as long as certain people are present at certain times. These licenses include food service operation license, which covers catering businesses, food trucks, etc. They have a cold storage warehouse license, frozen food establishment license, and then they're also in compliance with FSMA. So they, to be in compliance with FSMA, individual clients must obtain a bakery registration certificate and or commercial canning license. And then, as part of their technical assistance, AceNet will help their tenants through these processes and help them to get to that point and get obtain those licenses.
So that was all in Athens on day one. On day two, we went to Nelsonville, which is just about a 10-minute drive from Athens, where AceNet has started a second campus.
Okay, so they own a very big warehouse there, as it says 96,000 square feet. I think they have owned it for quite some years, but most of it was occupied by a tenant that has just recently moved out, and when we were visiting, they were actually still waiting for them to clear out some of their inventory. So they were kind of changing over, trying to figure out how to use all this new space there. It had some office space and then big storage areas. So as a consequence, at the moment, very little of it was actually used for food processing or food storage. One of the first things that they moved in there, which you can see in the lower picture, is a labeling equipment for, I believe they're making sauces and salsas, which we were able to see in the thermal processing room on day one in Athens. And then the next day they had moved to Nelsonville and were labeling it there. And that is, again, equipment that this company themselves own. And they open it up for other people to use differently this time. They offered their services to label for other small businesses that would like them to do it for them. So it's another example of a business that has grown up somewhat, helping out smaller businesses that could be of could use the help. And the warehouse has several loading docks, pallet jacks. It's housing at the moment a wood manufacturing center. So these are all ways they're renting out their space to other people that would like to use it. And the other main food processing room they have located there is a meat and vegetable processing room, which is basically a little brick building they built inside this warehouse. And they're both temperature controlled, so the working environment is perfect for the meat processing, for instance, to make sure your meat stays the right temperature. Other than that, I was positively surprised. It's just a very clean, basic commercial kitchen area, and then that has the specialized equipment for meat or vegetable processing in it. The entire brick building plus processing equipment cost just over $300,000. And it looked to me like you could really start with some basics and just add equipment as you go. For me as a meat producer, of course, the meat processing room was the most interesting. So I listed some of the equipment they had in there. Was a scale with label printer, slicers, grinder, a stuffer to make sausage, bandsaw, a vacuum packer, and a flash freezer. For meat processors, it would be a very nice option because we have to go to USDA certified processing facilities in order to be able to resell our product. And this ends up with everybody having the same products. We can only get what that meat processor produces. So if you have any interest to move into a specialty market or want to stand out with your product, this gives you the option to do that because you can do your recipes or your cuts that you want. And it is a state licensed facility. And at the moment, every time someone is processing meat in there, a state inspector is on site, making sure that all the procedures are being followed. You can work up your entire animal there, or you can just produce a specialty product you might want to focus on there and still let someone else do the processing of the rest. One opportunity they have identified that they think would be good is that someone taking up a business opportunity, becoming the meat processor there for other small farms, so that not every farmer has to spend the time in there producing it, yet having a lot more control and say in what kind of product they would like to have in the end. Another opportunity, I feel that would be great if we ever were able to get a mobile processing unit for livestock. Legal in Kentucky as it is in other states, this could become a docking station for that. Or it could become a docking station for an already existing poultry processing unit. I have to backtrack there a little for the warehouse. For the storage room, as I said, they were trying to still figure out what all to fill that up with. And that is one of the things we noticed, and they also mentioned in Athens that storage space was notoriously short, specifically for freezer and cooler storage, which they had started to put some into the Nelsonville warehouse too. But I think that is something for food trucks, restaurants, caterers, and farmers. The storage space possibilities of this warehouse or a warehouse are one of the big needs, and that could fulfill that. I think that's all I have to that.
All right, so we took you on a little tour of the facilities, but we also, besides just telling you what was there, we have a lot of reflections on what we saw there. So we wanted to share with you from the many perspectives that our group had on different sectors of the food economy, some of the impressions that we came away with. So the first way that we focused our thoughts was sharing what were some of the highlights of the trip for us. And Amy Williams really put a lot of thought and asked a really lot of great analytical questions about the technical assistance that's offered and the funding model of ACENET. And she prepared this content but isn't able to be with us today, so I'm going to do the best I can to present Amy's good thoughts about this. So Athens offers not just a facility for kitchen users, but they really provide a lot of supports for the entrepreneurs who are building their businesses in that space. As a matter of fact, ACENET is not just a food business, they're really general entrepreneur support organization, and they have a lot of businesses who use their facilities that are not food or farm related. We're really just focusing on the ones that were food and farm related. So, but in the kitchen, there are 30 to 40 businesses that use that kitchen annually, which is a really, really high rate of use. And 380 businesses served by ACENET, either through their one-on-one technical support or through workshops that they offer. I've attended ACENET webinars before on marketing, agricultural products, so they have a lot of reach. Most of their staff provide at least some technical assistance. 5 to 6 staff members, that's really their focus of their work. 65% of the technical assistance that they offer is food related. So there are some partners in their work also with Ohio University and the Small Business Development Center. So here you can see some of the services that they provide and what they charge for them. There's Nathan talked a little bit about the different types of equipment or different types of kitchen use. And then there's also the storage space is charged based on square foot for freezer and cooler space, and then by pallet space for dry storage. Then, and just for comparison, there are several facilities in central Kentucky that are certified kitchen space that people can use, but they do not offer any storage of ingredients or finished product. So then there's other services on here are more technical assistance, writing HACCP plans for meat processing best practices. There's some of the nutrition and food safety services that they offer, label printing and design. So there's several different services that are per service or per hour fees. Then talking about their funding model, again, Amy was really good about asking a lot of questions here. They are 40 to 60% grant funded continually year to year. Their goal is to reach low-income entrepreneurs and help develop those businesses. So they're really not planning to ever be self-sustaining as far as the fees that they charge for their services covering their staff time. Businesses, so sometimes in business incubators, there's like a time limitation for how long a business can stay in the program or facility, but at AceNet they really leave that up to the individual business if they feel like they've grown up or not. So they have a mix of established businesses and startups. Then Tabea talked quite a bit about the meat processing room. It was created in conjunction with this, side by side with this other processing room that's more meant for vegetables. Those are the newest facilities at AceNet, so they're not fully in use yet. But one of the highlights for us on this trip was that, for one, that was such a unique service to offer, that was for farmers to be able to do their own custom meat products. And then also that the cost of that facility development seemed so modest and achievable. Tabea, was there anything else that you wanted to say about that at this point? You kind of
About the meat. I think I went over everything
Okay.
I had.
All right. So I am going to pass this off to Lisa Munniksma now and let her talk about some of the takeaways and aha moments that we had the trip.
Yeah, this was a good trip to go on with this, I guess, assortment of people that we're all coming at this from different places, and have a lot of different experiences in the food system. So I feel like our takeaways and ahas are kind of sort of well-rounded here. The biggest takeaway for me was how long it takes to get something like this started, that this was really a gradual process for AceNet. They did fundraising for 4 years to open the Food Ventures Center, and then they realized, oh, this isn't enough, or the Food Ventures Center wasn't enough, not that the money wasn't enough. They needed a larger space or more capacity. So then they did fundraising for another 2 years to open up more space. And so something like this is not a thing that just is going to materialize. It's going to take some time. The possibilities for job creation, we saw so many different businesses operating in this space. So that was pretty neat. And also here, maybe it's the next slide, I'm going to talk about people being able to work together. But one of the things that AceNet really tries to do is to stay out of the business creation business. They want other people to create the businesses. They don't want to create the business. So for example, we wondered why there wasn't a sort of food aggregator, food hub going on there. And AceNet said it's because no one had started that yet, and that while that would be a boost to the local food economy, they didn't want to be the ones to start it. They weren't in the business of starting social enterprises. So lots of possibilities for jobs to be created in distribution and production sectors. The kitchen doesn't have to look like an airport terminal. Thought that was a really good one. Their kitchen was very well outfitted, but it wasn't gigantic. It wasn't super shiny. It was very practical, and did what it needed to do and had all these different businesses operating out of it. Keeping long-term larger tenants is an advantage to the management and to new startups. And we already touched on the large tenant that left the Nelsonville facility for AceNet and sort of left this hole that they had been there for long enough that AceNet was able to rely on them to help pay some bills and to also to fill in some time that was not being used in that facility. So like there was always someone there. And by having tenants that plan to stay a while and that are larger, Nathan had touched on one of the pieces of equipment, and it was actually several pieces of equipment there that one of the tenants had invested in, and then others were able to use it. So just having that tenant there, they were able to expand opportunities for other tenants. Throughout our trip, they had talked about running short of cooler and freezer space. And so I guess that sort of goes back to the first thing that I talked about, was that by the time they got done fundraising for one thing, they realized, okay, now we need to expand that thing, and they have to keep fundraising to be able to accommodate even more. And also to let this facility have a space to park food trucks. And maybe that seems kind of minor, but if you think about food trucks, they're not the most efficient vehicles. And so like having to run back and forth from wherever you live to wherever you're processing your food, it kind of makes it nicer to just have your food truck in the space where you're processing your food. And then kind of going hand in hand with our takeaways, we had all talked about what we were most excited about or what we most wanted to see. So Kenya Abraham with Slack Market Farm, she has the raw milk herd share and halal meat herd share, and so meat processing was her first. And also she works with a local or a Kentucky-based feed distributor, and so looking at how to make their distribution or how to bring their distribution to her area. So place that can all happen out of this facility if farmers are coming there anyway. For me, the thing that I was most excited about was just the potential for collaboration. And that goes in many different directions. One, between service providers, and then also between producers. And so by that, I mean, if there's a farmer who is growing a lot of tomatoes and there's someone who wants to start a salsa business, this is a great place for them to connect. And same that in Kentucky, we have several organizations doing jobs that are very similar and providing services that are very similar. So is there a way that we can get all of these people working together and to have them all working from one place? So lots of potential for collaboration in a center like this. Nathan was excited about a place to aggregate, clean, and package foods, also to store foods and distribute them. And storage is such a big thing for farmers. Sarah said she was most excited about the potential for vegetable processing for food banks and possibly for office space. There are so many of us working in these small organizations that sort of have random office space in various places throughout Kentucky. But if there was a place that like-minded organizations or organizations that are working on similar food systems issues could just have a space in the same building, I guess that sort of ties back into what I was talking about with the potential for collaboration. Tabea talked about storage space. Again, this is a huge thing for farmers, particularly freezer storage. A walk-in freezer is such a dream for many small-scale meat producers and is really a barrier to them stepping up to the next level. And then also a commercial kitchen. And for sure, commercial kitchens are, well-outfitted commercial kitchens, I should say, are a bit in short supply in central Kentucky. So Allie said she was most excited about the opportunity for networking and collaboration with other local food businesses. And Allie has the food truck that operates out of Berea, and also to streamline business support resources in a space like this. And then a food truck commissary kitchen and storage space. And then Tiffany says, as CFA staff, it's exciting to think how a hub could benefit farm to school work, and farm to school is a thing that is continuing to grow in Kentucky. And then as a producer, she was excited about space for commercial kitchen use, for bottling and brewing tea, and a venue for events or meetings that would allow us a location for networking and collaborating, and also for other organizations to come in and put together training and education.
So our trip to AceNet opened up lots of possibilities for us, but it also raised many questions. Several of the questions that we had that came to mind were concerning space. The Parker Seals building is a very large facility. It's about 80,000 square feet. So we were wondering how big is too big? How will we make the most effective use of the space? Is there another building that would be more ideal, or what is the ideal amount of space to have for this type of facility? And Allie mentioned that we should think carefully about how to get other tenants in the space to truly utilize the building and for more circles of the community to activate it. But as we mentioned earlier, the tenant that pulled out of the Nelsonville facility, that created a lot of challenges for them because they had been dependent on that funding a little bit. So that's something to think about as well. AceNet has identified a gap in their services regarding co-packing and distribution. So we thought that it would be likely that more farmers would take advantage of the processing capacity of the space if we had a way for them to co-pack. So if we had co-packing services available, then farmers would have more time to farm and someone else would do the processing for them. We're not sure what would be the best governance structure for the proposed facility and what partnerships would need to be created in order to renovate and operate a facility such as the Parker Seals building. And Allie also mentioned that her trip to the Athens facility helped her see that even establishing a brick and mortar operation, it could add a revenue stream by using equipment and storage, which could be an additional marketing point for the center. One idea is that food services could package or bottle their products for sale. And Katie wanted to add that it's hard to tell what creating an ecosystem might generate as far as businesses go. And she referenced David Cook from Grow Appalachia saying that we don't really know what's possible and what enterprises might rise up because it's hard for people to imagine the possibilities without seeing what's possible. And then one other question we had was how to address seasonality and who would use the facility in the off season. So if a farmer is only processing food in the facility for several months out of the year, who would use it during the winter months? And we had some ideas about like maybe bakeries or some other people that make value added products that do it year round. They could come in and step up when it's not being used by farmers.
Thank you, Sarah. So now we're at this point in this project of thinking like about the local food economy in central Kentucky and where should we start. And some conclusions that we came to here were that we need to prioritize our goals so that we can be successful and not be too spread out. To start with the easiest, most basic infrastructure and things that have the most general use. And storage has come up over and over again. And also thinking about this gradual process that whatever we start with is likely going to need to change over time, and to make sure that we have a plan for things to be able to expand. Katie Startzman added a comment that the combination of the well-equipped facilities and the outstanding service entrepreneur support was a really powerful combination, and that would have made a really big difference for her as a food startup business. Creating a distribution plan. Somehow, whatever comes up with this food and ag center needs to think about how distribution will happen for these whatever products come out of this facility. The project can really only be of limited service to farmers without figuring out the distribution piece of things. Regarding the entrepreneur support, we talked about that there would need to be advisors from many different aspects of developing a business, whether that's business planning, whether that's insurance, whether that's legal issues, food safety issues, regulations, and that if there was a way for a startup business to be able to access advice on all of those fronts in a centralized way, that would be super helpful to someone instead of being bounced around from agency to agency. I hear somebody relating to that. Maybe even that service providers could keep office hours at the center to help facilitate that and coordinate those efforts. And Sarah talked about recruiting a good mix of users to really take advantage of the facility. So for those of you who are with us live on the webinar, we wanted to make sure to take an opportunity to answer any questions you might have for us before we wrap up here. So you can do that by using the chat box or by raising your hand, and any of us could address your questions, and then we'll give you just a minute to see if any questions are coming in. And then before we conclude, we're going to talk about what the next steps are in this project and how you can contribute to the next phase of this planning. And I'm not seeing any questions coming in. I can go on to talking about the next steps, but if those of you who are attendees come up with anything, please just stick your questions up there and we will be sure to address them. So, so the next steps on this project. So we've done through the focus group that happened in February, and then we had a first round of surveys that followed that up. We've done a lot of brainstorming, come up with a lot of different ideas about what could happen at the Food and Ag Center. And the next thing that we want to do is start to filter through and focus some of that material. So there's going to be a survey coming out next week that is going to compile all the suggested uses that have been proposed for this and ask people to set some priorities on them. What would really be of most benefit to you and your food or farm business, or the services that you provide to the food economy? So that's coming up right away. And then based on the results of that, we one of our partners on this grant is KCARD, the Kentucky Center for Agriculture and Rural Development, and they are going to write a feasibility study for us based on whatever comes up as the priorities for this center, and they will do number crunching. There's going to be a lot of interviewing that happens during that phase, and so this, aside from the survey that's going out next week, there will also be opportunity to contribute to that feasibility study if you have input for us in that way. And based on the results of the feasibility study, one of two things will happen. Either we will go on and write a business plan for the Food and Ag Center based on the feasibility study, or if they determine that the project's not feasible, then what will happen is that they will write up for us some recommendations of these are things that need to be in place before this project could really take off its feet. So if you have ideas of people or organizations that should be involved in this project, we're really looking for more input, and we're going to be seeking sources of funding for it. So in order to know how to solve problems in the local food economy and make a more food and farm business friendly economy, we really want to hear from producers, food processors, food entrepreneurs, buyers about what could make our local food economy better. Then we can design a facility that will solve problems for people. So this webinar today has been recorded and is going to be made available. We can also send out the slides from today's presentation, and want to thank you, those of you who were participants and attendees today, and a big thank you to all of our presenters, whether you were actually talking in the presentation today or whether you were somebody who helped put together slides and helped put together the content for this. Just want to say thank you so much to all of you for your contributions to this, and we hope to continue working with all of you to make a really vibrant local food economy. And so on behalf of Community Farm Alliance, I thank you for your participation. And that will conclude today's webinar.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thanks.